relevance of history for career development. It is not only the relevance of history for career development because it is seen that nowadays the modern perspective, the relevance of studying history is going to be quite increased because people without the knowledge of their past origin and culture is like a tree without its root. But it should not be also forgotten that we are not the makers of history. We are not the makers of history, but we are made by history. What is said by Martin Luther King Jr. So we are going to start our webinar with a welcome note, our respected principal sir, Mr. Mohan Bora sir. Sir, may I request Mr. Mohan Bora sir to start his welcome note. Bora sir? Sir, please unmute yourself. Sir, please unmute yourself. Sir, please unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. As a member of Marangi Mahabidyalaya degree, I provide to welcome to you all to the national webinar organized by the Department of History in association with IQAC of our college. First of all, I welcome respected resource person, Dr. Rajiv Handik, Professor of History, Guwahati University, to our webinar. Secondly, I welcome Dr. Bibha Bora, retired principal of JDSD College, Bukakhat, as inaugurator of the webinar. Last but not the least, I welcome the participants who are joining the webinar from various university, college, and other educational institutions. With this welcome note, I hope the webinar will be a successful one. Thank you. Over to Jugal Jyoti Bora.
Thank you, respected principal sir, for your very short welcome note. Now, Dr. Bibha Bora, another important person of this evening, Dr. Bibha Bora, retired principal of JDSD College, the inaugurator of this webinar, is with us. Dr. Bibha Bora is an eminent historian and literary who has already authored more than books. He got MPhil and PhD degree from NEHU in the year of 1985 and 1994 respectively. Also, she got award from the Assam Literary Award from the Assam Government of India in 2020. Another important thing is that she also got literary pension in the year of 2015. Dr. Bora also got Swarnalata Hazarika Memorial Award for two of her books, namely Samannita Sinta Prabha and Pratyay Aru Propons. Moreover, she has been engaged herself in various socio-cultural activities for a long time in her locality as well as in the Bokakhat or Golaghat districts. Wish her more success in her life. And today, we meet her as our inaugurator. May I request Dr. Bibha Bora to inaugurate this webinar. Dr. Bibha Bora, ma'am, please. Hello, Bibha ma'am.
By the mobile, hey to off where?
Dr. Bibha ma'am, please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. Yes,
Good
ma'am.
evening to you all. Good evening to you all. Respected Mohan Bora, Principal of Marangi Mahabidyalaya, Dr. Rajiv Hendik, Professor, Department of History, Guwahati University, Mr. Jugal Jyoti Borua, HOD, Department of English and IQAC Coordinator, Dr. Mamoni Mohanta, HOD History Department and Webinar Coordinator, Mr. Otul Bora, Webinar Assistant Coordinator. At the very outset, I would like to offer my thanks and gratitude to all, and especially to Dr. Mamoni Mohanta, who has invited me to inaugurate the webinar on relevance of history for career development. This subject is very much to my choice because I was a lecturer in history in JDSC College Bukakhat for a long time until I became the principal of the same college in 1999. In the backward places like us, students are not interested to take history as a core or even as a major subject. The students, along with their guardians, they had a wrong conception regarding history. They regarded history as a mere catalogue of kings, generals, wars and dates, revolutions, and rise and fall of dynasties. Of course, it is true until a few decades ago. Until a decade ago, history is political and dynastic. But now, the trend of history is completely changed. Now, along with political history, the socio-economic and cultural aspect is also given importance. This change of emphasis from political to socio-economic and cultural aspect has broadened the canvas of history. History is now no longer narrative. It is now scientific. In order to make history scientific, we have to make it interdisciplinary. Therefore, the task of the historian is to study the past in order to find out the present, because past is intelligible only in the light of the present. I would like to tell the young researchers that Northeast is the virgin ground for doing research in history. Little spade work has already been done, but much has to be piled up for doing research work in 3 periods of history. It is said that there is only scanty of source materials for ancient period of history, because in order to study the ancient period of history, we have the religious scriptures like the Vedas, the Puranas, the Upanishads, the 2 epics, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the architectural and the epigraphical sources, and also the accounts of the foreigners. But for medieval and modern period of history, we have sufficient source material. Therefore, I call upon the young researchers to come forward and do research upon Northeast for their career development. I also urge upon the students of graduate and postgraduate level to study history. Therefore, history is very helpful for them to appear in any competitive examination. Last but not least, I would like to tell that there is a popular saying in our society that old is gold. Everything that is gold is lying scattered in the pages of history. Therefore, history is regarded as one of the important subjects among all the subjects of social science. By studying history, we not only know the history of their ancestors, but also the manners and customs they followed, rules and regulations they observed, festivals they celebrated, language they spoke, government that existed, the roles and the functions of the government, and so on. Therefore, it is the duty of the teachers to encourage the students to take history or to study history because it helps them to develop a better understanding not only of our own land and the country, but also the world as a whole. With these words, I declare that the seminar is open. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Viva ma'am. In our very short inaugural speech, she has very clearly described what the various perspectives of the studying of history, and I think all of us are quite benefited and attracted by her very short lecture. Thank you, Dr. Viva ma'am. And now I request Dr. Mamani Mohanto, HOD of the History Department, to give our present introductory note of our today's special guest, resource person, Dr. Rajiv Hendik sir. Dr. Rajiv Hendik sir from Dibrugarh, Guwahati University. So may I request Dr. Mamani Mohanto to start his.
Thank you, Jugal Jyoti. Am I audible, Jugal? Am I audible, Jugal?
Yes, Rajiv.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
A warm good evening to everyone present in this virtual platform. Today, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Rajiv Hendik, a well-known person from Guwahati University. Sir, first of all, we bemoan for the sudden demise of your beloved mother. We pray Almighty to keep blessing the good soul. Now, I am going to introduce Dr. Rajiv Hendik sir. Although he is already a well-known person, but it is formality for us to introduce in this platform. Dr. Rajiv Hendik is carrying a very brilliant academic career. He was starting his professional life as a lecturer in history, MDK Girls College, in 1993. From 1995 to 2000, he is working as a lecturer in Dibrugarh University, then worked as an executive assistant to the Registrar, Dibrugarh University, and became the Deputy Registrar, Dibrugarh University. He also served as the Program Coordinator of the National Service Scheme, Dibrugarh University, and served as a reader as well as Associate Professor in History, Dibrugarh University. Dr. Hendik did his PhD on Environmental History of Assam from Dibrugarh University. Dr. Hendik is also working as member Board Studies in History, Nagaland University, member Board of UG Students in History, Rajiv Gandhi University. Hendik sir is awarded with many precious awards and grants from various organizations. He received Dr. Khurja Kumar Bhuya Award from Guwahati University in 1991 and a gold medalist from Guwahati University in MA, Sir Wallace Research Grant from British Council in 2011, Peace Scholar Grant and National Merit Scholarship for pursuing MA degree and State Merit Scholarship for BA. So we know that Sir has a very brilliant academic career. Dr. Hendik published books, monographs, and proceeding volumes. Some of his very famous articles include British Forest Policy in Assam, published by Concept Publishing Company, Colonial Ethnography and Understanding the Other through John Butler's Travel in Assam, The Growth of College in Assam and its Impact on Higher Education. British Forest Policy is his famous book. The major research project is on ecology and society in post-colonial Assam with special reference to Upper Assam, His areas of interest are environmental history, oral history, peace and conflict studies, ethnohistory, medieval and colonial Assam, history of Northeast India and Southeast Asia. Besides his vast works, he is also a life member of Indian History Congress, Northeast Indian History Association, Association of South Asian Environmental Historians, Oral History Association of India, etc. And he is a research guide for PhD and MPhil degree. 7 scholars are already awarded PhD under his guidance. We all are eagerly waiting for his speech in this evening. Over to Jugal. Over to Jugal Jyoti.
Thank you, Mamani Madam, for your very good introductory note to Dr. Hendrik sir. Now, just before going to the session given by Hendrik sir, so we are going to play a song related to this topic. We are going to play a song. Please play the song, Mamani Madam. Please play the song. Hello, Mamani Madam. Please unmute and play the song.
রাজা মহারাজার কথা আজির বুরঞ্জি লিখকে লিখিছে মানুহৰ মুক্তিৰ কথা অতীতৰ বুৰঞ্জি লিখকে লিখিছিল ৰজা মহাৰাজাৰ কথা মিশরে দেখরে নীল নদীর পারে পাল্লাইতে বিনালে ওই কৃষকৰ কুকুৰে ব্যথা অতীতৰ বুৰঞ্জী লিখকে লিখিছিল ৰজা মহাৰাজাৰ কথা অতীতৰ বুৰঞ্জী লিখকে লিখিছিল ৰজা মহাৰাজাৰ কথা আজিৰ বুৰঞ্জী লিখকে লিখিছে মানুহৰ মুক্তিৰ কথা অতীতৰ বুৰঞ্জী লিখকে লিখিছিল ৰজা মহাৰজাৰ কথা। লুইতৰে পাৰৰে গাঁৱৰে মৰিশালী, লুইতৰে পাৰৰে গাঁৱৰে মৰিশালী, ৰং মনে নিতৌচিয়ৰে কৈ পুৱতি মনৰে কথা, কৈ পুৱতি মনৰে কথা। অতীতৰ বুৰঞ্জী লিখকে লিখিছিল ৰজা মহাৰজাৰ কথা। পাহৰি পেলালো বুৰঞ্জীয়ে কোৱা সামন্ত যুগৰে কথা। সময়ৰ সাহেৰে লিখি যাম আজি মই মুক্তিৰ কথা, মানুহৰ মুক্তিৰ কথা। অতীতৰ বুৰঞ্জী লিখকে লিখিছিল ৰজা মহাৰজাৰ কথা। আজিৰ বুৰঞ্জী লিখকে লিখিছে মানুহৰ মুক্তিৰ কথা, মানুহৰ মুক্তিৰ কথা, মানুহৰ মুক্তিৰ কথা।
With this song, we also tribute to Dr. Bhupen Hazarika, an evergreen song where all the new perspectives of writing history is very clearly reflected. Dr. Bhupen Hazarika very rightly said that the content of modern history is not only the boring stories of the past kings and queens. The modern historian have been nowadays engaged themselves in writing history using subaltern approaches. The common and the indigenous peoples who always have been trying to gain their freedom by through struggling by their emancipated attitude, and in this way they could gain their emancipations against their oppression and slavery. So if history has the resources to rebuild a new civilization, if history has the resources to reconstruct a socio-cultural nation, then why not? History is a source of career development. So to discuss all the things, we have with us Dr. Hendrik sir. I think all of us, the students, the participants, the professors, all of us will be greatly benefited by his insightful presentation. And we also hope that all the new perspective of history, modern history, will be touched by his wonderful presentation. So may I request Dr. Hendrik sir to present his presentation. Dr. Hendrik sir. Over to Dr. Hendrik sir. Hello sir.
Yeah, I think my audio is okay now.
Yeah sir, go on.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a very nice inauguration of this entire national webinar on the relevance of history for career development, which is organized by the Department of History in collaboration with IQAC, Marangi Mahabidyalaya, Golaghat. Mr. Mohan Borua, principal of Marangi Mahabidyalaya Degree College, inaugurator of this webinar, Dr. Bibha Bora, who was the retired principal, ZDSG College, Bukakhat. It's actually a pleasure and so to say a privilege on my part to see you in this webinar after a very long time. So I hope you are keeping well. And if I may actually mention, we have actually we have associated ourselves for a long time through history, and also because Baido belongs to a family of historians. Uh, and I think we all know about Swarnalata Barua Baido. Young students today may not be knowing, so you should know that Bibha Baido is her sister, and so S.L. Borua's Comprehensive History of Assam. A Comprehensive History of Assam is the book which is uh, studied not only in the universities and colleges, but I think all over the world to know about Assam. So it is indeed a pleasure to be a part of this webinar where Bibha Baido is also there. And she has also very wonderfully, in a way, introduced the topic of this webinar. Dr. Mamoni Goswami, the head of history, who is the coordinator of this webinar, and Mr. Otul Bora, who is assistant coordinator, and importantly, Mr. Jugal Jyoti Bora, who is the IQAC coordinator, who has been coordinating not only the IQAC, I think he is also looking after all these webinars. Esteemed participants, teachers, students, scholars who are there, and I'm very happy to note that there is also one of our friends from as far as Kashmir. So this is, of course, I just saw it. There may be some more colleagues from other places, but then it's indeed a pleasure to be in a webinar where people today can take part from different parts of the country and the world. So this new normal, in a way, uh, over this platform, over this internet, is also opening up new avenues, opening up new platforms of knowing each other, of causing convergence amongst ourselves. So this is indeed a very relevant topic, as has already been said. Of course, the topic is not on the relevance of history. Uh, if it would have been on the relevance of history, there are so many things which could have been said, but it is a relevance of history for career development, which is also indeed very important for all of us. And as in the inaugural address, Dr. Bibha Bora had mentioned that the number of students who wants to take history as a subject is still low, and actually going back in history, when I joined Guwahati University in 2013 December, I was just looking in for books in the library, and I came across a very small booklet uh, which contains a report on history, and Herembokando Borpujari sir was the person who has actually compiled that report. And that report, whatever was stated in that report, it's almost the same. The situation regarding our subject is almost the same. But I think uh, very recently, in last 2 years maybe, the number of takers of history, it has increased. And I don't know, I have not been for some time not in touch with what is happening in colleges under Dibrugarh University or in colleges in other parts of the country. But at least in the colleges under Guwahati University, I'm very happy to let you know. I think many of you are also associated with the subject, and that the number of takers, it has increased. And in colleges like B. Borua College in Guwahati City, history last year, that was the subject which actually got filled up in the first instance, and the percentage of marks who got into it, the cutoff was around 80%. So that is something I think very noteworthy. So why I am saying this is because the relevance of a subject is also measured by the students uh, in relation to the career or in relation to the help that that subject will give to the student in due course of time. So career development is the objective of most of the students. We all know that. And it perhaps also evolves from the very question which have been asked in many ways. Sometimes they are also asked to write essay on that, that what is the aim of your life? So in that way, I think history has more or less remained a sort of equilibrium on its own. It is considered to be a difficult subject. It is considered to be a subject where a lot of memorization is necessary. Whereas again, the inaugurator has said about uh, in the past we used to study mainly political history, where students they had to memorize a lot about dates, about names, about places, about events. So sometimes it's a tall task for many, and so it is regarded to be one of the difficult subjects in social sciences or humanities. Uh, but then uh, over the time, as I said, it has redeemed its place because the main point is that here the relevance of history cannot be denied by anybody. That is the most important, and I think that is the bottom line of it. Now, if we talk about career development, uh, what is a career actually? If we link up a subject with a career, so we have also to know what career means. Career actually it is defined in different ways. Some say that career is an occupation which is undertaken for a significant part or period of a person's life. For example, my career is that of an academician. So I have, for a significant period of my life, I have uh, given for this occupation of an academician. But then the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it also defines career as a profession for which one trains and which is undertaken as a permanent calling. So that is also important. It also leads to a profession. So therefore, career development in a word, in a way, is a lifelong process. It's a lifelong process that involves learning. It involves some work, or you can say profession, and also it involves the future. And what is the future? The future is that of the preferred future, what the student or that person actually looks for. And you connect that again to education, where often a student or a school scholar they select a subject of their choice, which will help them in their preferred future, in charting the goal, the objective of their career. So career development is therefore also related to job opportunities and the scope of a profession. So in all this in all of this, or you can say contextualizing all of this, how how relevant is history for career development is something we can now think about. Of course, every subject is relevant in its own way. Now, if we ask somebody from sociology, they will also say that their subject is also relevant. Mathematics will also say it is relevant. Every subject will say that they are relevant in their own way. And therefore, there are many takers of those subjects as well. But history, as far as the subject is concerned, it itself has a very long ancestry. From the time of the development of human civilization, in some way or other, human beings have tried to record the past. They have tried to relate with the past, and that is the reason why, as a subject, we can say that it has got a very long ancestry compared to other subjects which have actually evolved. Many of them evolved from history, from the subject history, like even political science. It has happened institutionally in Guwahati University also. The persons who actually started the Department of Political Science here, some of them actually belong to the discipline of history, like Debo Prasad Borua, who went from history to start the Department of Political Science. So anyway, as a subject also, it is very holistic and inclusive. So it is generally said that history stands on two legs. There are two legs on which history stands. One is time and one is space. So time and space, they are very important for history. Not too many things lie outside the realm of time and space. You can just think about that. Can you have something which is not actually within the context of time? Time is there always. And when you relate to this temporality or to this time scale, you automatically in some way give credence to history. And this time scale that we talk of, that space is the geography. That space is the country, the continent, it is the ecology, it is the ecosystem. So in a way, uh, when we take both these two very important parameters of history on which it stands, as I say, time and space, we in fact come up with a subject which is very holistic. So in order to know oneself, yeah, and in order to know others, history becomes very important. And therefore, there is a very famous quote that, history is the root, political science is the fruit. So this type of, when there is a comparison between subjects is done, these type of analogies do come in. So the root is important for anything, in order to know what grows outside. So from that point of view, uh, history has remained important, and it is a very important part of the entire learning process. And it is in this learning process that the career development actually rests. So for any career development, some amount of history learning is essential. It is not only essential, it helps. It helps in the career growth. So the word history comes from the ancient word historia, which is inquiry. So inquiry for what? Inquiry for knowledge, and knowledge from inquiry. So you can look it from different directions. And even from that point of view also, as an academic discipline, history is very dynamic. It is very profound in a way. When we talk of epistemology, or when science of knowledge, when we talk of creation of knowledge, in some way or other, history will come in. Today, when we are talking of pandemic, we are trying to look back to the pandemics that happened in the past. When the doctors are talking about vaccine, when they're trying to develop a vaccine to fight this COVID, uh, the virus, coronavirus, they are doing it with a lot of emphasis on what happened in the past. So in its own way, uh, historical knowledge is essential for the development of all disciplines, of all sciences. So, uh, though what we study history in schools, in colleges, in university may not be the same, but the skill which is employed in learning history, or the very basics of history learning, the necessity of history learning is there in every branch. When the doctors, they try to look after a patient, they always ask for the patient's history. If the patient's history is given correctly, then that patient will get right treatment. If the patient's history is not correct, if it is something which is given wrongly given, then obviously the treatment will not be proper. So therefore, we can again reiterate that history is holistic and inclusive, and any human knowledge can be located in the context of history, and even subjects can be located and understood in this context. Anything that we see, in fact, in this world, we are sitting before computers, before uh, mobile phones. we are surrounded by different gadgets. All of these has got a history. And we today do history of different commodities. There is a history of sugar, there is history of tea. History is being written like that. And I'm not going into the different uh, subjects of history today. History is being written in different ways and in different, we're taking, different objects or subjects as as the for research as an area of research. So it is expanding. So therefore, when we talk of all of this, we come to a very valid conclusion that this is a subject which helps in the development of general knowledge, or it helps in the general awareness, because whatever you encounter, you will get to know at least some, you will have some understanding. If you have a proper historical knowledge, you can have a understanding of what is before you. So for general knowledge, uh, history is a subject which has always been preferred. And in many ways, history is not studied by many of these IAS officers, Indian civil services officers, and other people who are into various jobs that require this knowledge of general awareness, general knowledge. But they took it at a later stage. There are doctors, there are IIT graduates who, in a later part of their career, they took up history because they wanted to compete for different jobs. So, general knowledge or general awareness is dependent on a large scale in historical knowledge. And a student taking history as a subject of study will have some advantage in competitive exams that test a candidate general awareness. So the popularity of history as an optional subject of civil services examination is legendary. We all know that history used to be one of the most sought after subject for appearing in Indian civil services examination, or one of the toughest examination in our country. And as I said, doctors, engineers, and even many others actually who want to join civil services, they took to studying history. And even for other purposes, we cannot understand India without knowing its political and constitutional history or the economic development that took place. For all of this, to understand the other aspects of the country, to understand the economics of India, to understand the politics of India, we need to have the knowledge of the history of India, the history of the freedom struggle, the history of its past. And my personal experience is also that many students of history actually do, they in a way they compete more effectively in many of the competitive examinations. Before I left the Dibrugarh University, the first TET examinations which took place, there were not too many postgraduates which were left. Everyone got absorbed. We used to get phone calls, sir, I have cleared TET, though I am not saying that uh, all, all of them should go for TET. There are quite a few who should actually go for NET. But then the ease and the comfort with which they cleared TET, I think it is because of their subject of study, of their history. Because many, at least 30% of the general knowledge, at least 30% general knowledge, it came from history. And there were other, uh, questions which were linked to history, which came. Anyway, uh, not only, with relation to uh, this competitive examinations, but history can also be a career on its own. It can be, of course, a career as far as academics is concerned. One can become a teacher from school to universities. One can do MA in history after graduating in with history major, or history as a pass course also. And then one can do research One can go for doctorate degree. One can, of course, MPhil is being under the new education policy. MPhil is being now, uh, you can say, it is out of the picture. But then researches can be done and on different aspects. I did my research on forest history. There are many who are doing environmental history. So there is a very, very strong cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary approach which is being taken up. And history is the core in a way of doing it. We are doing that. So then after doing graduation, therefore, one can go opt for a career in academics. That is one career option that a person, a student having history can do. But then there are some other options also. One can do MA in archaeology. Now, archaeology, for that you require a graduation in uh, history. It is preferred. I'm not saying that it is, one has to be a graduate in that, because archaeology itself is a very, very uh, super specialized field in some aspects, because there are geologists who also, they are known as archaeologists, but they come from from the discipline of geology, and there are other paleobotanists who also do work on archaeology. But then basically, archaeology is something which can be taken up, or which has got a very, very strong, close relation with history. So after graduating in history, one student, uh, apart from going for MA in history, can also go for MA in archaeology. And within archaeology, one can go for sub-disciplines like numismatics, for example. Numismatics, one can do the study of coins and all. So that is again a sort of super specialization. One can do that. There is another option apart from that. That is a MA in museology. Now, MA in museology, it can be done under the Government of India Ministry of Culture. So it is this is attached to the National Museum in Delhi. So of course there are other universities also that are offering this course now. So MA in museology can be done by a student of history. Now, what can a museologist do? They can look after museums, which is again a very, very important profession. Museum curator is a very important profession. So one can go for that. There are, of course, many other options which I am not going into, uh, because the option of going for MBA after doing BA in history is also there. But those I am not, and also, for example, mass communication. One can become a very good journalist with knowledge of history. And there are many good journalists today in India who actually had history. Uh, One of my favorites being Ravish Kumar. Ravish Kumar is, he did his, uh, studies, his major was in history. Anyway, so that can be done. One can also become an expert in other ways by not going into the professions or occupations like that of a teacher uh, or of a journalist. One can become an independent writer. One can become very independent writer. They can write research papers. They can write books. They can write blogs, like Ramchandra Guha, for example. Ramchandra Guha is a writer. That is his profession. And he does a lot of research. He has his own team of researchers, and he is a sort of academician and and a writer who is not directly attached to any university or college. So there are actually a lot of options, career options for a student taking history. And then there are also new channels which are coming up. There is, I think, one channel, the History Channel, which is there, which employs a lot of history students. Then Talking of career options, some of them are very, very specialized, like heritage conservation or heritage restoration. So that is another line one can take. Uh, when a movie is made, for example, a historical movie is made, whether it is a historical fiction, they employ some of the experts. They try to find out when they make the sets, when they make the when the art direction is given. The art director depends a lot on historian in trying to recreate the situation in which that the characters of that movie, of that historical movie, when they were there, what the situation was like. So for that, they don't do without historians. They do it with the help of historians only. So these are some aspects which are not, very properly cut and right type of mainstream professions, but these are something which can be actually taken up by anyone studying history. Then tourism. Tourism is the sunrise industry, as it is said. Of course, not under the pandemic situation. Today, in the pandemic situation, tourism is bearing a brunt, a very heavy brunt. It is suffering, like all of us. In different ways, we all are suffering. But then, tourism is suffering anyway. For tourism, historical knowledge is very important. Historical tourism is very important. Destination promotion, destination research are normally done by historians. The importance, for example, today of Taj Mahal, if you look at it from the point of architectural point of view only, Taj Mahal doesn't have its glory. It must be, it must be the story behind the Taj Mahal must be told. Then only it becomes the Taj Mahal. So, uh, in that way, for tourism, for development of tourism, for destination research, for promotion of a place, or you can say for discovery of the importance of different destinations, history becomes very important. And there are also not newly emerging, it has already been there. There are the jobs of the archivist who wants to archive. Now, who are the archivists? Archivists, they are responsible for assembling, for cataloging, for preserving and managing valuable collections of historical information. Now, archives are they are now being, you can find even the company Godrej, they have got their own archives. Many companies, they have their own archives. Many institutions, they have their own archives. Public sector organizations, private sector organizations, they have archives. And for the archivist, normally they employ historian. Even in the Assam State Archives, you will find the students, some of the students of our students, actually, they are now employed as archivists there. So it is not that history, the career options of history or students taking history as a subject, the scope of career development is limited. It's not limited actually. It is in fact very broad. If we look at it from the point of view of becoming a museologist or archaeologist or becoming an archivist or getting involved in the tourism industry or in art direction or in becoming a writer or a good journalist, in all of this history can play a role. So therefore history is very important for career development. With history one can actually, they can chart a career within the domain of the subject and even outside. And on top of that, the knowledge of history, it provides the foundation of lifelong learning. It provides this foundation because you have the base of knowledge and the awareness of oneself as a human being and with a long ancestry. It's not only that we are what we are today, but we also know where we have come from. And therefore, we always this idea of where we will go to. So the subject of history is beneficial in a lot of ways. And history is being written and rewritten and reinvented in different ways as uh, in the words of Bhupen Hazarika, as he said, that in the past the historians wrote history of Raja and Maharaja, that is the kings and the emperors, and today's historian, they write the history of uh, human freedom, of for emancipation of the people. So I think I have spoken enough on this topic because this topic is on career. It is specific to career, and I think I hope I have been at least able to uh, generate some ideas on the relevance of history for career development. And I know there are many within this very distinguished audience who will be having more knowledge on. I mean to say they may be having more ideas on career than what I have said. With this, I thank the organizers, the Marangi Mahabidyalaya, the Degree Mahavidyalaya College family for inviting me, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this very relevant topic with you. And I am ready for any question and answer that may be asked. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Was the audio all right?
Yeah. Henrik sir. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Henrik sir. In his not so long presentation, but yet he has touched all the things of modern history. And he's going to say that the study of history is very essential for all the social sciences. He has also touched all the things that what is the relations of history, the various aspects of studying history. You may say the socio-cultural aspects of studying history, also the holistic aspects of studying history. Also, very interestingly, he's saying that history for learning means area. Here he's going to say that inquiry for knowledge and knowledge for inquiry. So it's a very important and insightful things. Also, because of the topic is mainly related to the student-oriented topic, the career development for the students actually. He has also passed all the things, how history can be a source of career development, and he has very clearly described all the things from the modern point of view, from the modern perspectives, and how to study history, looking forward from this point of view. The student-oriented presentation, I think, will very helpful to the students as well as to our participants. All of us are benefited. We are quite attracted by your presentation. Thank you, Henrik sir. Thank you very much again. So now I request Mr. Navakomal Bara now. Mr. Navakomal Bara, is there any query? Is there any query in the chat box? Is any query? Please start your query.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jugal.
Go on.
Respected Mohan Bora sir, Principal of Marangi Mahabidyalaya. Respected Dr. Bibha Baramam, inaugurator of the webinar. Respected Dr. Rajiv Hendik sir, resource person of the webinar. Respected and dear esteemed participants and my dear colleagues. Today, on this webinar, there is only one question arises. The question is from Chiranjeev Dahal. The question is, what, according to you, are the imperfections that you find in India's history? What attempts can be made as remedy for them? Sir? Hello, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
I repeat the question.
Yeah.
Or not?
No, it's okay.
Okay, sir.
So I thank Chiranjeev Dahal for asking a very pertinent question, but a question actually which does not have a proper answer. I don't think even the imperfections of history. We never say that our history is perfect. We cannot say history is in a way, because that is the reason why there is always a history. There is no the history. So there is always a history, and sometimes the history that we are writing or the history that we are studying, it may change. It may change with the discovery of something very new. Now, with a lot of scientific research also going into all of this, with genetics, for example, playing a very, very vital role in trying to find out the ancestry of our or the ethnicity of the people. The history itself is in a churn. Actually, we are trying to bring in the historical the scientific findings into the historical fold and trying to rewrite history. Now, what are the imperfections of history of India? I think the number one imperfection that we find is that it is not representative. Uh, if you say when we talk of history of India in the all India context, for example, even the NCERT books, they don't even have a chapter on the history of Assam or the history of Northeast India. They don't figure there at all. Only in a very sparing way they have found places in the history. But then if you can have the history of the Cholas, if you can have the history of the Pandyas, of the Rashtrakutas, or of the any other dynasties which have lasted, some of them less than even 600 years. I think there is no question why a kingdom which lasted 600 years can at least have a footnote. It should at least have it should find mention in a way. So I think the one of the major imperfections, it is not only with with Assam. In the context of Assam again, there are many marginalized groups whose history has not been incorporated, or where you can actually go on finding history. But as a matter of fact, writing a history of that sort where we can include history of everybody may be a bit difficult. It may be a very tall task because India is a very large country, very diverse, with with thousands of ethnic groups, thousands of people with thousands of histories. Actually, how to link all of them together, and therefore maybe historians have found the way of uh, studying history uh, from the point of view of dynasties, of empires, who in a way reflect a longer time scale. But then I think there is a scope of studying history of India thematically. So we can take up themes, for example, being a person interested in environmental history. Today, when we talk of environmental history, we talk of it in terms of themes about about what are our themes. How people have used water, how people have used forest, how we have what is the history of our agriculture, the land use pattern, things like that, which takes us away from the very, very people centric, or you can say a power centric world, to a world where of course there is power, nothing is beyond power, but then we study from a different perspective. So these perspectives are important to enrich history. It is not that things are not being done, but there is need for convergence of these different developments which have been made into history. I can give you a side example of what uh, Yuval Noah Harari has done for the history of sapiens. He has written a history of 70,000 years within one book, and while doing so, he has he has given it a different type of treatment. He has treated it very differently from what other historians have done. So I think for a country as diverse as India, for a country as large as populous as India, with so much of ethnic, religious, so much of diversity, we can have a history of that, what Yuval Noah Harari has written of that sort, which will be inclusive in its own way, where everyone will find a place in different ways. So that imperfection of not being inclusive enough is one imperfection which we can all actually try to do away with. And the other imperfection is, as I have said, is the absences in history. There are a lot of absences in history. There are in Northeast, for example, many tribes who have only oral traditions as the source of history. As historians, we have to go into that. We have to research what these oral traditions can tell us about the history of these tribes. and then can rewrite a history which and bring it within the fold of a comprehensive history of Northeast India and history of India as a whole. So these are the ways in which historians can contribute. And as I said, this is a question which is very complex, and I try to answer it in my own way. Thank you for the question, Dahal, and I hope
Thank you, sir.
I am being
Thank you,
able
sir.
to yeah, answer that.
Thank you, sir. There
Yes.
is another question. The question is from Pranjal Soikia. The question is, at present context, generally school students, they don't like to take history as an optional subject. Parents also encourage them to take science and other optional subjects. As a result, a very few students have taken history at college level. So, what suggestions you give for the students and parents? Sir?
Yeah, again, it is a complex, complex question.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
as I said, history, I don't know for what reason, people have not found very interesting. Though many consider history to be the world's, it is the oldest thriller. It is like a thriller, novel where you get the thrill out of studying that. Anyway, uh, but I don't think actually the situation is like that. I think we need to make history more interesting. Because I myself have, as I said, I gave you the information of what is happening in B. Borua College. Last time, in fact, one student who came to me asking actually to request the head of the department of that college to get a seat because the cutoff was 80%. I was really surprised. How come it can be 80%? Then I asked the principal, who is also known to me, and then he also said, surprisingly, last year it was history that filled up the seats at the first school. No, what I am trying to say is that I found out that quite a few of those students, they were studying in a school. I'm not going to name that school, where a teacher was a motivator. She was the motivator. She has been teaching very in different ways. So, for example, what we can do is, have we ever asked about students about trying to know the history of anything that they see around, that everything that it has got a history. So that inquisitiveness, the very term history, historia, inquiry, it has to be embedded in their mind. That history is that. History is actually developing an inquiry mind, an inquisitive mind, which is the basis of the learning process. So, the answer to that question is we have to actually teach it in a more interesting way. We cannot force the students to come and take it. We cannot force the guardians to come and take history. We cannot force them because it is not possible. And there is also, I think, there are some who also say that history was actually it was made an optional subject. At one time, it was a compulsory subject. That is also one thing for which people, a student lost interest because in many ways, in our country at least, it's a tops-down approach. It's a command it is a command and control type of system. When something comes from the top, people easily they take it. Now, by in a way taking away history and geography from schools, it was also a sort of, you can say, the importance of these subjects, they were a bit diminished in the eyes of the public, because there are many guardians who also look at it from that point of view, from the point of view of what the state was doing, what the government was doing. So if the government, if they consider that history is unimportant, then many people also tend to think so. The problem is, these decisions are taken by bureaucrats. These decisions are taken not by academicians. That is the unfortunate part. No historian was asked, no academician was asked when these decisions of taking away these subjects from the school curriculum was taken. So that is the unfortunate part. But then the importance of the subject remains. What happens in our country, I don't know, but in countries all over the world, history is still studied with a lot of interest, and I think it will remain. We need not be so much you can say, pessimistic about the situation. But as teachers or anybody who is practicing history, we have to be, you can say, we have to be able to generate the interest in the student. Actually, that is where I think the the key to unlocking the interest lies, and that is how I think students will be more attracted towards it. There we can show them movies. There are so many YouTube's nice videos which are there, which can be shown to them about, even if we talk of wars, there are so many nice movies which are there, which we can show them. We can show them about even the about the great people, that that we study in history. On them there are so many movies, so we can actually mix and match in our uh, in teaching history. Our methods have to be more hybrid in a way. We can give them different experiments. You may be surprised that how can experiments be given, but I'm not talking about any experiments, but we can give you not experiments, but we can give them projects. We can give them projects. We can ask them to ask some old people, interview some old people in their family or in their neighborhood, and try to know from those persons how the area in which they are living, how it has changed. So these are the ways in which I think uh, the interest in the past can be generated, and the interest in the past, once generated, will lead to these students becoming better historians. And I think it is not the quantity which matters; it is the quality that matters. And I think that is, from that point of view, I am not really very pessimistic about the numbers of students taking history, because last time, as being the head of the Department of History of Gauhati University, I can tell you that against our 60 seats, we had 607 applications, more than 600 applications last year for our 60 seats. So that is not a bad, I think, situation at all. Any more question?
No, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you
Okay.
so much. I think the
No, I think
participants are benefited by your answers. And with this question, sir, our
there,
question
there,
session is completed here.
there is one question I am seeing from our friend from Kashmir.
They're already there.
Yes, yes. What steps should be taken to make history more valuable and interesting for students? Should government take steps to modify the curriculum? I think I have more or less answered that. Thank you. I have more or less answered that.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now it is coming.
Mm.
So one more question is there, Prasanta Soikia.
I think
How can furnish the information career option in the degree level students which really become benefited?
you see, this is the job of us, of all teachers. If we are, if Mr. Saika is teaching somewhere, it is his job to, tell the students what can be, what are the options which are available. If supposing if in the colleges where you have the higher secondary classes, you can have that. You can tell the students what are the options. We can actually help the schools in the neighborhood by teaching them history, by making history more interesting, by showing movies in the colleges and inviting the students from the schools to come and see that. So there are many ways in which we have to be very creative in a way. We have to be very creative in a way, because it is also true that entire pedagogy today, it is facing great challenges in view of, Professor Google is there, uh, YouTube is there. There are so much of information all over, and the process of teaching, uh, has to change. It has to change in a way that we have to live up to the times, because the earlier chalk and talk method no longer impresses our students, because they are into their mobile phones. They are into uh, you know uh, because of the very situation they are in. Because today, for example, we are taking classes over online. Now that itself is a big challenge now. And so the multimedia, the audio visual type of ways in which students are uh, accustomed to. That is making the thing very difficult. So we have to find, devise very creatively ways of making them or generating the interest. And as I said, I repeat, our teachers in consultation with the students can take up projects of writing history of their localities, in understanding micro histories. We can tell our students to write the history of their families. I mean to say, that type of attempt to inquire about the past will, I think, sustain their interest in the subject in many ways. And it is being done in many countries, including Canada, where oral history is now becoming very popular. And with the use of oral history, people are trying to at least understand the contemporary society better with the help of recording devices, and also with the very, very good, you can say, projects made in uh, convergence with students and teachers, and also authorities. So I think I have answered, so to say, so Prasanta Saikya, I think I have told him that degree level students, they should be in a way given this information in the higher secondary itself, in the higher secondary courses itself. We can do that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is no more questions. And
Thank
with
you.
this question, the questionnaire session is completed here. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Over to Jugaljyoti Bora.
Thank you, Mr. Navakomal Bora, Assistant Professor of Economics, for smoothly generating the query session. And thank you to the participants. Perhaps you are quite satisfied with the answers that the Professor Hendrik sir. And now the session is going to be end. So I request Mamani Madam, SOD of History, to present her vote of thanks. Mamani Madam.
Thank you, Jugaljyoti. Thank you, Jugaljyoti. Am I audible, Jugal?
Yes, go on.
At first, I would like to propose my hearty vote of thanks to our honorable resource person, Dr. Rajiv Hendik sir, for giving us valuable time. In spite of going through a very hard situation, our request and attend the webinar. So we pay our gratitude to you. Thank you so much. This webinar was not possible without the help of our coordinator, Mr. Golpura, of our class, helping us from the beginning to the end of the webinar. At present, he is in a situation. He is in isolation since he has been tested COVID positive. Despite of facing difficulties, he is with us. We hope for your early recovery. We are grateful to have a renowned Dr. Viva M. We are grateful to have a renowned figure, Dr. Viva Bora, as an inaugurator of our webinar. Thank you so much, ma'am, for spending your valuable time with us. Without formal permission and guidance, this would be very difficult for us and useful. I would like to pay my gratitude to our honorable principal sir for always supporting us. And also thank you to the whole Marangi Mahabidyalaya family for being with us and making it happen smoothly. Your contribution to this webinar will always be remembered. I would like to offer my love and affection to Ujjwal Bora and Officer Bora sir to their technical support. Last but not least, thank you so much to all the respected participants for showing interest and paying attention to this webinar. and making it wonderful evening. It is really good to spend time with all of you. Thank you so much. With these words,
Thank
I
you.
will
Thank you, madam.
thank you.
Thank you, Mama Madam. Thank you, Professor Hendrik, sir. Again,
Thank you.
for having with us.
Thank you
And
everyone.
having very meaningful evening. You have given me us a very meaningful evening. And thank you, Dr. Bibha ma'am. And so here we should end up our session. Okay.
Thank
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Stay safe.
Good
Yes.
night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.